Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Relentless Transitions podcast, where we talk about life, business, and triumph. We've got an exciting podcast for you today, all about fear, handling your fears. So, Teresa, what's new with you, and how are you handling your fears?
Well, you know what? Right now, I'm trying to focus on really taking care of myself. That's what I've been focusing on this past week. And I've been drinking more water and drinking more fresh juices and eating, more raw foods, which has been an experience. I do like fruits and vegetables, but I've been trying to really eat just some raw things, and I am definitely feeling better. And
Yeah,
it's
good for you.
calming, very
Oh, good
calming.
for you.
Hmm.
So it's a lifestyle change that's helping you calm your anxiety and maybe your fears a little bit. So wow.
It really is. I feel like I'm resting better. Like I don't have an issue with sleeping, but I've been resting better. Yeah.
Very, very cool. So why don't we jump into helping everyone not just make lifestyle changes, but make mindset changes to
Yes.
manage their fears. So did you know that there are many truths about fear? So we're going to discuss a few of these truths about fear today. I'm going to start with a truth. The fear will never go away as long as I continue to grow. Fact. It's just a fact that as long as you continue to take new risks, to make your dreams come true, you'll feel some discomfort. You'll feel the discomfort of fear. And you know what that discomfort is? That's a discomfort of growth. And if you wait for fear to go away, you'll never gain the experience you need to manage that fear. So stop playing the when this happens, then I'll be able to do it game and jump right in. And as you build your confidence, your relationship with fear will change, and you'll feel like you have control over your fear and not the other way around. What do you think about that, Teresa?
You know what? That's really interesting. But what came to mind was, how do you handle when the growth is painful?
Yeah. So that's a lot about, again, um, you know, having that confidence, tapping into your inner source of confidence to
Mhm.
know that you're following your dreams, that you're doing what's right to you. We've done an episode on tapping into your confidence, and one of the things we suggested was that you tap into that inner place, that inner core
Mhm.
in you that you know is your strength, and it's in every one of us. It's a matter of it becoming bigger than the negative voices that are in your head, which tend generally with a lot of people are bigger than that inner confidence.
I was going to say sometimes those voices can be really loud. You have
Yeah.
to tell them to calm down. And when I mentioned about just the kind of a lifestyle change, that is one of the things that I noticed before I started, really focusing on drinking more water and the fresh juices. I was finding that at night, this is just transparency. I was actually, I would wake up and I felt like my jaws were clenched. And
Mm.
I even spoke to my dentist about it. And he, just said, well, he didn't give me a solution. He just said, if you're waking up and you feel like they're clenching, then they probably are. And then after a moment of silence, he asked me, was I having any stress?
Mm.
And my mind, because I'm so creative, it's constantly thinking. I'm constantly, even when I'm asleep, it seems like when I wake up or I become aware, I'm having like full conversations or I'm tossing all these ideas around. But as I have started to drink more water and more fresh foods, now I'm not a doctor, but I'm just saying what my experience has been, and this has just been over the period of last 5 days, I am resting just so much better. And it seems like my jaws are, more relaxed. So maybe it's just a stress releaser. And, we all face fears. What I'm finding is that for me, the best way to overcome fear sometimes is just to go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
You just kind of have to
Exactly.
just jump right in and
Yeah.
do it, because we can what if it and
Yeah.
how come it and overthink it, to death. Both, putting pressures on ourselves to do whatever it is that we are thinking about, but also worrying about how other people are going to perceive it. Before I launched my publishing company, or really, how did I even get to launching a publishing company? Before I even wrote a book, people would say to me, you should be writing or you should be speaking. And I was like, well, everybody speaks the way that I do, or everybody writes the way that I do. And really, what I found is it's not true. And so I just started slow and started, I didn't go right to doing a book. I started sending out like a daily inspiration to a few friends, just to see, what their response was going to be. And that 5 friends turned into 500.
Yeah.
And then, of course, by then I had become comfortable in my voice being heard and people being excited about it. So that's probably another tip too, is just to start
Yeah.
small, but
Yeah.
get started.
Yeah. Yeah. That's another truth about fear for sure, is that really the only way of getting rid of it is by doing something, is
Mhm.
taking that. And it can be a baby step.
Yeah,
And in fact, that's what I encourage people to do, is just that baby step. Take
yeah.
one step towards that fear. And the more you do that, the more your confidence grow. And now Teresa's a published author, right? So
And
I
an
mean,
owner of a publishing company,
exactly,
helping
exactly.
other women to showcase their voices in print. So,
Yeah.
yeah, who
And it
would have
began with
thought that?
one baby step, didn't it?
Yes.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly, exactly. So, and I think, all these things we're talking about fear today are so interrelated. Um, I imagine that when you took that baby step, you actually started feeling better about yourself, right? You
Yes.
actually started feeling like, I'm a go-to kind of person. I can do this. I got this. So doing it actually makes you feel accomplished.
Yes, it
and
does.
and staying stuck in that fear um, doesn't make you feel accomplished. It makes you feel small and depressed and inadequate. So just by taking that one little baby step,
And it can lead to regret, because you
it
start over time, because time doesn't stop just because we're afraid. So it keeps
for
going and
sure.
going. And then you find yourself in a place of looking back.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So when you make things happen, when you choose to make things happen towards meeting your goals,
Yes.
you actually the fear actually starts, you know, slowly
Hmm.
disappearing
Yes,
over
it
time.
does. It
So
really
yeah,
does.
yeah, yeah. It's amazing that fear can keep you so stuck,
Hmm.
and and um and that the only way, and that's what that's what these truths about fear really are, the only way to help that fear become less is to start moving out of your comfort zone, right?
Hmm.
So
Yes.
yeah, yeah. So it's a big thing.
Yes. So it helped me to go from, who me, and I'm not necessarily different, but we all are different and we
Yeah,
all have something to offer. But I went from who me, and no, nobody who wants it. No, people are gonna think, I'm crazy. to, the more and more people that wanted to be a part of the inspiration community, because it started with those 5 people, but then they started sharing the inspirations with other people. And then other people wanted to become a part of the group. To now, today, every single morning, I send out the inspiration to over 500 people and across the United States. So different time zones, different age groups. The youngest person that gets the inspiration is 12. The oldest person is over 80. So, as it has grown, I'm like, wow, this is like really amazing. So yes,
Yeah.
the confidence has certainly grown. And so now I've gone from who me to why not me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I was starting out my coaching career in 2010, I had been a stay-at-home mother for 15 years. And my life had revolved around managing my family through many international moves.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew, every move had fear associated with it, of course, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting over in every place. But I finally got to a point, and we were finally living in a country that I was legally allowed to work again, and my kids were, entering middle school and high school, and I decided that I wanted to do more. But after 15 years of not being in the workforce,
Yes,
the fear,
I can't
the
imagine.
the lack of confidence, it was huge. It was like a big weight on my shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I was fortunate enough. I worked with actually a life coach, and she got me pointed in a direction, and I got a postgraduate certificate in intercultural communications, and then she hooked me up with another life coach, another coach and therapist who offered coaching in intercultural communications.
Mm-hmm.
And we met, and this woman said, "You can do this." And she traveled a lot, and she had a client coming up, and she said, "I'm leaving the country. We've got this client. You're going to do it." Like, she threw me into the deep end of the pool.
Oh,
And man, talk about fear. I mean, I
yes.
hadn't worked in a capacity where I was earning money, and um, in 15 years, and all of a sudden she's throwing me into the deep end, saying, "You can do this. You've got this client. You will connect with this client. It will go well." And you know, I spent days leading up to the meeting just over preparing, and just I'm one of those kind of
Mm-hmm.
overthinkers and researchers, and I don't take new steps easily. And I did it, and I loved it. And then I did it
Awesome.
again, and I loved it. And as time went on, yeah, still when I was, doing some of these trainings and coaching, before the meeting would start, I'd feel little jitters and stuff, but the confidence was there. And so those jitters meant nothing. I mean, they were
Mm-hmm.
there. I acknowledged that they were there, but I knew I was good at what I was doing. And it
Mm-hmm.
all came. I had the push, from somebody else, but it was a baby step just to
Mm-hmm.
even talk to that woman,
Mm-hmm.
to admit that I wanted to work again,
Yes.
and so it all starts with one little baby step.
Mm-hmm.
And like Teresa's grown her following with her inspirations, and I've just continuously morphed my coaching to meet the demands um, of the population that I'm living in, actually, because I was moving so much and that sort of
Right.
thing. So yeah,
And
it's
as you were speaking, there's something that I think that probably, those listening to this podcast can really resonate with. As you were telling your story, you had a 15-year fear that was built up.
yeah,
But I actually thought about right now, as we're going through the pandemic, there are fears that have built up by, this transition of working at home. But now, as in some places, regulations or restrictions are being lifted, there's a real fear of going back out,
Yeah.
and it hasn't been 15 years.
Yeah.
So, just over this course of time, 1 to 2 years, we have, switched things up and been working from home. But now the reality of actually going back out to work or here, just yesterday, the restrictions were lifted to where we could go to restaurants. And I don't want to go.
Mm.
I mean, I don't have any intention of going out right away, although I know that there are people that are already out there. And just speaking with some of the people in my circles, that's actually, I don't know that yesterday when we were speaking about it, if we identified it as a fear, but that can be a real fear.
Sure.
Anytime that there's change, fear can enter in. And I think that,
Exactly.
what we want to do with this podcast, as we're sharing this information with you, is to just let you know that having fear is normal.
Mhm.
So it shouldn't paralyze us. What we need to focus more on, or what will be more helpful, is trying to figure out how can we continue to push forward, even though the fear is there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Pushing through the fear is really less frightening and less painful than actually living with the underlying fear. So if you constantly let the fear control you, you're not going to be living a life to
Mm-hmm.
its fullest, right?
Right.
It makes you feel helpless to be
Mhm.
constantly living in that state of fear and powerlessness. And so the only way to get rid of that is to push through it.
Mhm.
And if you refuse to take risks, you're going to be living with a feeling of dread,
Yes.
your whole life, right? So
Yes.
you can't live in states of what ifs. You have to live in more a state about what's next, and let's push
Mhm.
through. Let's
Mhm.
get beyond that rigid comfort zone we've built for ourselves in order to find the life that you really want to have.
Yes. And one of the things that I really like, my favorite tip that we're going to share with you today, is that not only am I going to experience fears, but so are other people. Everyone experiences fear. So, even though now, I'm at that point of, I have my own publishing company, there are people who are looking at me like, oh my goodness. But then there are people that I'm looking at and I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So, while we're admiring others, that's the thing that I keep in my head always, is that while we are admiring others, there are those who are admiring us.
For
And it
sure.
doesn't matter at what point you are on your journey, there is always someone there that's looking up at you.
Yeah.
So even if you feel like you're at a low point, still there is someone else who wishes that they, were in your shoes. So when you look like you have it all together, it doesn't mean that you don't have fear. And I have learned that along my journey, that even after some successes, I still constantly have fears. As you continue to have
You.
ambitions or desires or want new things, there is fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, a good example is us, and I'm not going to speak for you on this, but us trying our hands at podcasting,
Oh, yes.
every day, every time we get together to record, there's a little piece of me that says, what the heck are you doing? Like, just, turn the cameras off, turn the recording off, and just go about your life.
That's
And
where
that,
I come in. I'm like, come
yeah.
on,
That's
girl.
right. That's right. And so it's every little new thing, every little thing you try,
Yes.
every little change you are facing is going to bring you to that point where you make the decision: am I going to push through,
Hmm.
or am I going to stay stuck?
Yes.
And and I say, It's when you stay stuck that you end up at your unhappiest.
Mm-hmm.
And when you've pushed through, you actually, it lifts something from that feeling of dread, that feeling of fear, for sure. It lifts something every time you push through one of those things that you're dreading, one of those changes that you don't want to do. um, you feel like a weight has been lifted off you, and your
Mm-hmm.
confidence does grow. You know, there are um, I when I'm working with coaching clients who are learning to manage their fears, I have six exercises that I try and walk them through, and they can choose which ones work for them and which ones they are most uncomfortable with. And they help you actually claim your power over your fear. So, Teresa, what's a thing that you do to claim power over your fear?
Mm. I would say, I'm very reflective. So I have this way of taking a step back
Mhm.
and looking at a situation first before I react, and think about thinking about what's the payoff. If I stay in this situation, then what is going to be the payoff for it? And then making a decision. Sometimes that just kind of helps us to have more information about when to make our move,
You're right.
and then also it can empower us, because we can, if we know, once we think about what's the payoff, and if we decide that we're going to stay in the situation, or we're going to need to make a move. If we, either way, we can put plans in place. And
Right.
that is actually very empowering.
Yeah.
And then what I've also done is take it a little step further and consider, well, what can I learn in this place while I am here, even though this is uncomfortable for me and I want to make a move. We talked before about how I took this class that was to help me to hone my skills as a speaker. And the class was just, it was just really intense. And in the end, I didn't really come away saying that I enjoyed the class. However, to get myself out of a negative space, I actually thought about, and while I was there, I focused on why I was there in the first place, because I actually left home and flew somewhere to attend this class. So it wasn't an easy just get up and go, walk away kind of thing. Um, but now, and even once I got to the airport when it was over, I actually reflected on what did I learn? What can I take away from it? So, and it was really just the teaching style of my teacher. I didn't enjoy that, but I really took away and focused on what my payoff was for staying in the situation.
Yeah.
And then what my plan was for when I was able to make a change.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's important to reflect, because some of us do change, we struggle with that idea that we're choosing to stay in this position that's causing us fear, that's causing us to be unhappy. Um, but we don't, um, and then we start thinking about more negative things about the situation we're in, and it just keeps piling up and piling up. And if you actually start looking at the situation from just a little bit more positive point of view, it can actually help you be ready to take that next step, right?
Absolutely,
Instead of
because me doing, and sorry to interrupt, but just like with
yeah,
me doing the inspirations, I
yeah,
mean, when I started doing the inspirations, I just really had no idea about where, I am today. I never envisioned it. I did envision ultimately that I would write a book, but now teaching other people how to write a book, teaching people how to speak and hone their craft in speaking, teaching people about how to launch their own podcast. I never, really envisioned that back then. So I just tried to, as it was uncomfortable for me, initially sending out those inspirations and getting feedback from people who were reading what I was writing. Yeah, that was really uncomfortable, but the payoff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, sometimes there are real reasons to stay in a situation that is making you unhappy. But I think once you recognize those reasons, um, it's easier to say, well, are those reasons good enough
Mm-hmm.
to keep me stuck here, right?
Yes.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
because they are paying me off, it feels good to be here, whatever. But yeah, you know, once you start realizing that that's partly why you're staying in your comfort zone, and you've actually listed why you're choosing to stay in your comfort zone, it becomes clearer that those maybe are just excuses, right?
Yes. Yes.
Mm,
Yes. Because in
so,
launching my business, you know what? Um, I said to myself one day, and this is another tip, is to pay attention to what you say when you talk to yourself.
yeah.
I've said it many times before that if you ask yourself, if a friend or if a person said to you what you were saying to yourself, how would you respond? And if your response resembles that you would slap them or yank their hair out,
Yeah.
then you need to change your language on how you're speaking to yourself. But one day I had to tell myself when it came to launching my business, but that could be any fear. This could apply to any fear that you have. Who told you that you couldn't launch your business today?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I asked myself that question, nobody was telling me
Right.
except myself.
Yeah.
Nobody was telling me I could not launch my business, or who told you that you won't be successful in business. So I had these questions that I just started asking myself, and I would say, who told you that? Who told you that? And I realized that the person telling me all these things was myself.
Yeah.
And then I needed to face that and kind of get some different language.
That's right. That's right. So you became aware of your options.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
can stay stuck. I can stay not launching my own business. Um, or um, I can choose to do something about it. So I can choose to be connected with my negative mindset, or I can choose not to be. It's your choice.
Right.
And understanding that you actually have that choice is empowering just in itself, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And I mean, it could apply to anything. I know that I keep, mentioning business, but just life things. And again, being transparent, because this podcast, we're real and we are relatable. But some fears, I can remember a very large fear for me was getting married, believe
Oh,
it or
okay.
not.
Mhm.
We as women, many of us, we dream from little girls that, of our wedding day. But honestly, by the time I got married, in my experience, there was no one in my family who, besides my grandmother, there was no one in my family who had gotten married and stayed married until death, us two
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
My husband, on the other hand, in his entire family, everyone stayed married.
Mm.
There was no divorce. And I didn't know whether I could live up to that or not. I didn't know, if I could really be a wife in that way. And it really produced a fear in me. I wasn't thinking about it until after he proposed. But once he proposed, the thought of being a wife really,
Yeah.
I didn't know that I would have the skills, to do that. So I was afraid. And I remember really having to just have a strong conversation with myself. And I had to just make a decision. Either I'm going to go forward and marry this person and be a part of this family that's all joyous and, and they constantly got together. My family was not that way. We didn't really get together. We were a small family. There was plenty of divorce to go around. And even in my godparents, they got divorced. So I just didn't have that example. And I was really fearful of that. So fears come about in life and in business.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, the thing that actually brought me to this point of really trying to understand my fears
Mhm.
was actually the exact opposite of Teresa, was my fear of leaving an unhappy marriage. It was an unhappy marriage, but it had provided me with such an incredible life. And I was really comfortable. I mean, but, and so it was fearful to leave all that stability behind just because I was
Mhm.
unhappy, right?
That's
And
good, because then you're thinking about, well, what's the payoff?
yeah,
That ties in. What's the
exactly.
payoff if I just stay?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so the payoffs were huge if I stayed, and they were not so great if I chose to go, except for my own mental well-being, my
Hmm.
own physical well-being. I mean, I was making myself physically sick because of how unhappy I was, right? So
Hmm.
so that 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 fear, that's what drove me to really learn about how to
Hmm.
um, push through those fears. One of the things I did regularly, and I encourage clients to do all the time, is to journal. To
Hmm.
journal about how you can change a negative situation into a positive one. So for me, I would journal about what my life could be like, the different, it's going to be different. It's not going to have the same advantages as staying married, but it had so many positive things about it. I was going to be happier.
Hmm.
I was going to have a different kind of stability. So it really takes some time to take the negative and how can I turn that into something positive, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And I find the best way to do that is actually to journal it out, to write it out longhand. They do say that, writing things in a journal
Hmm.
helps the brain make connections better than just
Yes. Oh,
typing it or talking
absolutely.
about it. So,
Yes. I mean, even writing things down just on a piece of paper helps you to plan better.
exactly. Yeah.
Because you're going through this whole thought process. So yeah, that's really good. That's
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. And then I guess, so for our final tip, or exercise for today, would be to look for gifts um, you have received from something that you perceive as bad. And I think I really kind of covered that when I was talking, giving the example about that speaking
Mhm.
training that I went to. I just didn't enjoy it. First, it was so intense that really made it difficult, but also just the way that the instructor taught the course. It was like the instructor didn't really connect with me. And even though the goal was to help me to craft my story, um, hmm, she didn't have respect for my story.
Mm.
So, I was telling my story, but here was this person who was looking at me like, that's ridiculous.
Mm.
Really, that's the way that she made me feel. Like, what are you talking about? And it just, anyway, it just was a very difficult situation from it, in which of course that produced anger and then fear, because there were other people who were
Yeah.
there and they were listening to me, tell my story. So it was really tough for me to push through. But then the gift is that I came out of that so much more powerful as a speaker. And I just focused on the techniques of what she was trying to instill in us, because my story was still my story.
Yeah.
It was still my voice.
Right.
So that is definitely a tip. Don't let anyone silence your voice. Your story is still yours and it's valuable. So the gift though that she gave me was those, I was able to take those techniques and really apply them to my true story. And once I came out of there, I mean, as far as a speaker, I became an international speaker. I mean, it really helped to transform me as a speaker and in my visibility in my business. So, that there was a gift. So it was something I perceived as bad or as grueling, but I stayed there and I endured because I
Yeah.
focused on, this gift or what I was truly the true benefit of this to me. Instead of focusing on the person or on the thing, focus on yourself and what it is that you can get out of this.
Yeah. So in that instance, you could have chosen to connect to all those negative reactions you were having.
Hmm.
You chose to look for something positive. And that's a lot of dealing with your fear is learning to control the negative voices in your head and the negative criticisms you're feeling and or you're receiving. And it's it's a powerful tool to be able to let go of negativity and look for positivity and look for the positive in situations. One of the things I encourage my clients again to do when they're going through this coaching to help them manage their fears is, there's a lot of negativity in your life. There's negativity everywhere, and we do a lot of complaining,
Hmm.
and complaining just breeds more negativity, right?
Yes,
And
it does.
so I challenge everyone listening here, and I challenge you, Teresa, I challenge myself to go 1 week without criticizing or complaining about anyone or anything. Go 1 week without producing negativity and generating negative thoughts. And
Um,
it's a big challenge.
you see, I'm looking around. I'm looking for some duct tape.
Exactly.
I just put a piece right here on my chin.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Because I mean, it's all part of that. It's almost universal that we are drawn more to the negative than
Yeah.
we are to the positive. And so just by trying to practice this little thing, you start replacing that
Yes.
need for duct tape
Yes. I'm
with
just gonna
something
put a piece
positive.
right here on my chin
Yeah.
and just walk around with it. It'll be a conversation piece. People be trying to, because you know what? You have to also, if you're going to do that, you have to be mindful of the people who are around you.
Exactly.
I started to say that earlier when you were talking about the podcast, and sometimes, we don't really feel like it, or when we were initially thinking about it, it was like, what in the world? But you need that person who's gonna just grab you by the hand and say, come on,
Yeah.
you need like a positive force. And if you're going to, not say negative things, not feed off of negative things, then that means that you don't need to be on the phone with your good girlfriend or your good guy friend who is just dumping all of their
Exactly.
trash on you. And I call it trash. I'm not trying to offend anyone, but in the inspiration community, every Thursday is trash pickup day.
Yeah.
And it's not paper trash, but it is like that emotional trash that
Yeah.
people have dumped on you all week long. And whether it's a look that somebody gave you and you interpreted it as, whatever, or maybe even a tone that someone was speaking to you in, or it could be actual words or deeds that someone, sent your way,
Exactly.
is trash. And
Yeah.
so on every Thursday, we have trash pickup day and we get rid of it. We want to do it daily, but I make it a point to, point it out on Thursdays in inspiration community. So if that helps, that can be something that can help
Here.
with fears as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Teresa, what do you have to offer us as a big takeaway from our discussion today?
Well, my takeaway that I'm going to marinate on until our next episode, and one that I would love for our followers to marinate on, is that not only do I have fears, but so does everyone else.
So
Not
don't,
only do you have fears, but so does everyone else. I mean, we have fears. We worry about, yeah, are people going to listen to the podcast, so on and so forth. But we all have fears.
yeah. Yeah. And don't forget that you're not alone. You know,
Absolutely.
we're all in it together. So, yeah. So, thank you everyone we've come to the end of this podcast. Thank you for
This has been a
listening.
good one.
Sorry?
I said, this has been a good one.
It
I
has been a
enjoyed
good
this.
one.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Almost
So,
made me cry a couple of times.
oh dear.
I wasn't planning on being that transparent, but
Yeah.
right.
But that's great because we're keeping it real. And the truth is that we all, back to that takeaway, we all have fears, and it's a normal reaction to change. It's a normal reaction to trying something new. It's just normal to have fears. But the good news is you can learn to control them, right?
Yes.
So that's what we hope you take away from this podcast this week. Thank you for listening, everyone. Connect with us on Instagram. You'll find Teresa at I am Teresa_C, and you'll find me, Rosalind Keith, at Triskelion_transitions. I am a certified Field of Fear coach, and now's your opportunity to book a free discovery call at relentlesstransitions@gmail.com. Let's work together to help you increase your confidence and overcome your fears. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Yes. Bye now.